do something called an experiment map. All right, maybe I want to try to meet someone this way. Maybe I want to try to meet someone this way. And just to kind of map it out, you sort of draw circles around sort of main ideas, and then you group them with like follow-up ideas. And the way that it works is you'd put down an option like, okay, I think I want to try to meet someone in this context, or I think I want to pursue, somebody like this. And then you ask yourself like, okay, if that was my plan, what would I do? And you write down like all your ideas about that. Then you take a step back and say, okay, which of these feel the most actionable? Which of these feel the most motivating and energizing? Start trying some things on for size and seeing how it fits. That's, essentially, I think a lot of what dating is you're just saying like, okay, is this a fit? Is this a match? How does this work?
We're going to be talking about how to get clear about who you are and what you want in dating. Tracey is a leadership coach who has just written a book about how to find your authentic self and the magic of knowing what you want. So this is a fantastic conversation. You don't want to miss it. Hi, everybody. I am Sandy Weiner. Welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. Not only am I a dating and relationship coach, but I have written 3 books to help you on your journey to lasting love. And my third book was published in September of 2024. It's called Love at Last, and it's true stories of falling in love later in life. I wrote this book because so many people were losing hope of ever finding their match. And these are true stories of people from every walk of life at every stage. And I just wanted to share these stories because whether you're dating or you're in a relationship or you just want to be inspired, these are fantastic stories. All 3 of my books are available on Amazon for Kindle, paperback, and audiobooks as of last week. So you can find them all on Audible as well. And before I bring on my guest, I want to invite you to join my Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date. It's for women over 40 who want a positive place of support to find lasting love. We have such a supportive group that we have people who find their last first date and still stay because it is such a supportive, wonderful place. So if you're not yet a member, join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my guest, Tracey Gee. She is the author of The Magic of Knowing What You Want. She's a certified leadership coach and consultant and a sought-after speaker and facilitator nationwide. She helps people learn more about themselves and their unique sense of meaning and purpose. She feels honored to have worked with a breadth of incredible individuals and organizations, including UC Berkeley, the Miami Heat, and Coca-Cola. But her great ambition in life remains to pet as many dogs as possible. Welcome to the show, Tracey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Although you don't work in the dating and relationship sector, you work with people, leaders in particular, and you work with people on helping them uncover their authentic desires and what they really want. And I think in dating, we often get lost in being really clear about what we want and need. And so I thought it would be great to have you on, especially since you have a new book. Tell us first why you wrote this book. What made you write a book on discovering what people really want?
Well, I'm trained as a certified leadership coach and consultant. So as you said, that draws me into a lot of conversations with people. And I just started to notice that, the things that I was trained in, some of these tools for understanding yourself, understanding your own personality, they're wonderful. They're so helpful for building that self-awareness, but they're really meant to be used unto you figuring out what you want or unto what you want. And I noticed that when the conversation would get to that stage and we'd say, okay, great. Well, here's your strengths profile or whatever tool we were using that day. They would say, this is great. Well, what do I do with this? And I would say, well, that depends on what you want. Where do you want to take this? And a lot of times, sometimes people could say, great, and we would run with that. Other times, though, I noticed people felt really stuck by that question. They felt really confused. They'd sometimes feel ashamed a little bit that they didn't know themselves or didn't know how to answer that question. Or even like scared is a word that I would hear once in a while, like, oh, that's scary. So I just heard time and time again, people reflecting on this kind of barrier to really knowing what they want. I think for women, we often can struggle with this because we're so tuned in to what everybody else wants. We're so tuned into, what other people at work want from us, at home, family, and we're very aware of those things. It can be really easy to get lost in the middle of that and to forget to carve out that kind of space and practice to know what you really want. And so I just started to notice that and become curious about that process. Like, oh, what's behind this? Why is this so hard for so many of us? Why does this feel so tricky when I feel like most of the message is like, okay, yeah, step one, just like figure out what you want. And step two, go do it. But I felt like, again, there's this whole group of people that were like, we don't even know how to start there. Or, I had people say, I haven't asked myself what I want in years. Like, I can't remember the last time I even asked myself this question. So, again, I just became really curious about this. Like, what is underneath this for people? What helps them get unstuck? What are the ways to begin? Because the other thing is, like, even if you have that awareness, like, okay, this isn't something I do very well, and you sit down to try to say, okay, well, what do I want? Sometimes that doesn't necessarily get you to clarity. And I would have people say, like, I've been asking myself that question, but I don't know how to begin to answer. So there's just noticing how complex this area of our lives can be, just how we interact with our own wants and desires. And again, especially as women, I think that this is just such a complex relationship we have with this part of ourselves.
I totally agree that as women, we were not raised to even consider that question for
Mhm.
ourselves. And I remember even with my sister when her husband said, I think I want a divorce, but he wasn't sure. And
Mm.
he was just like putting it out there and leaving her hanging. And she was devastated. And I said, what do you want? And she had
Yeah.
no idea. She had
Mm.
never asked herself that question. And then I remember in coaching school when we were doing values, uncovering our values and what we wanted and in life and what our purpose was. And these were all questions that I had never really taken the time to know or had any skills to know how to do it. And
Yes.
so I think a lot of people get stuck in that awareness stage. Awareness is the first step in any change. But then what?
Yes.
It's true of so many things. Like therapy will help you with awareness. They'll help you to be aware that you're not speaking up enough, but how do you do it? And so I
Yes.
love the how to. And so if we could just hear from you, what's the next step?
Yeah, that's what I love. I love that you named that distinction between awareness and skills, because I think that's such an important thing to know is that this is a skill. It's something you do get better at and can get better at. So I think if you have anybody who's listening who feels like, oh yeah, that's me. I don't know. I feel kind of stuck with this. Like that's okay. That's very normal. I like to just help people take away any kind of angst about that and just to say, yeah, it's a set of skills. It's something that you can grow with practice. It's something that over time, it's like a muscle that you build up like anything else. Like if you go to the gym and you're new to it, yeah, it feels awkward and you don't know what you're doing and you're kind of sore or whatever, but the more you go back and keep at it, like you'll see that strength build up and it's the same with this. So I really think some of the first step is giving yourself permission to even dive into this question, to want what you want. I think there's a whole set of skills around not putting judgment on ourselves for this. I think I've seen a lot more discussions online and whatnot, really interesting conversations about sort of like what I think folks are calling like a good girl syndrome, which is sort of what we were talking about with women, like raised to be like, if you're a good girl, you don't, bother people with what you want. You don't inconvenience people with that. You're just all about other people. There's like this, I think the heart of it is a really good desire to not want to be selfish people or to not be inconsiderate. But I think, like many things, it can be overdone and sort of take us in this place where we're really distanced from ourselves. So I think there's a whole skill in learning how to take that permission onto ourselves and not wait for it to be given. I also think a really important skill can be to notice the kinds of questions that tend to come up when you try to ask yourself what you want. Because sometimes when that is again a confusing thing, what is happening for a lot of people is they'll sit down to say, like, okay, what do I want? Or try to engage with this question. And immediately other questions pop up really quickly. And people will say, well, I don't even know it's possible, or I don't know what I'm capable of, or I don't know if I have the money to do this, or I don't know like who's going to be mad if I want, so there's just the reason why it gets confusing. And this is a phenomenon I call desire fog. Like we sort of stay in this desire fog stage because we're asking so many other questions that don't help make space for that want. So even that conversation with your sister, my guess is some of what's happening there is like, well, I know what this person wants, or I don't, is this allowed? Like what will happen? What are the practicals? And those are not unimportant things, but I find that they can overcrowd that core of what you really want. And again, that place of authenticity, like you said, or honesty. So I think the first step is I go into this in the book, just naming these different types of questions that tend to come up. And I find that even that alone can be really helpful to create just a little bit more space to say, okay, we can get to some of those things later. Of course, like we don't want to be irresponsible. We want to be practical. I'm not one of these people who's like, quit your job and go do what you know. I'm like, no, I understand we have to live in the practicalities of life. And I want people, what I want people to understand is that just because the most extreme version of living into what you want, whatever that looks like, may not be what you want to do or what seems possible, there's usually a lot more room and a lot more spaciousness that we can have if we approach it with intentionality.
It's really interesting to think about those questions that come up because I think a lot of people self-sabotage in that way. And with any big change that we make and any decision that we make to move forward and out of our comfort zone, we're going to have so many sabotaging voices that come in. Well, you're who do you think you are? And, why would you deserve that? Oh, you should just aim lower, or don't do
Yes.
that until you've had 16 more years of education, or,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, even when I decided to get divorced, I had no idea what I was stepping into. I just knew what I needed to get away from. And I
Mm,
knew that there had to be a better life on the other end. I
yeah.
didn't do it blindly without any money at all, but I didn't have a set income yet. I was just getting into coaching,
Yeah.
but I had such a strong pull to do this new career, to start life on my own, to reclaim parts of myself that I had lost along the way, that I couldn't go back. And I
Yeah.
see so many people who are stuck in that. Well, how could I do it? You
Yep.
could do it, but I can't do it. And so I think it's really important to notice them, but then also to quiet them and say, we'll have time for you later, but like, let's focus first on permission to have desires, permission to want what we want,
Mm-hmm.
and not judging ourselves for being not a good girl.
That's right.
Um, yeah, there's a book out there called The Myth of the Nice Girl by Fran
Mm,
Hauser.
mm,
And she talks about this in terms of business and how she used to be this, nice girl who would get stepped on a lot. And she was the one who always stayed late.
yeah.
And so people would just call on her to do all the things people didn't want to do until she realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm not just nice, I'm a doormat.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. So I think we have
Yes.
to separate those two. Like
Hmm.
there's a difference between being kind and being a doormat or
That's right.
not valuing yourself enough,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love your story. I love that example because I think that a lot of times that is kind of the process. Like you have to say no to the things you know you don't want and aren't right for you sometimes before you know what it was for. And that feels really scary. That's not easy to do. So I love that you name that. I love that you have this lived experience of what that meant for you because I'm sure that was terrifying at the time and yet you had to trust your inner wisdom to know like this is not the right situation for me anymore. I don't can't fully answer all the questions. I'm sure you did as much as you could, but there's just some steps that require you to get pulled into that require some mystery, that require some confidence and exploration. And I think I love that because that's so many of the themes that I'm drawn to. Just like how do we create room to explore? You don't have to be certain in order to move forward. In fact, the only way you'll get to certainty is by trying some things out And, for you, like, I'm guessing there's no way you could have mapped out your whole journey, like what you've been doing since that moment. There's no way you could have predicted that. But as you look back, you see it. But those early steps are so important. And that's what I'm trying to give people support with. Like, oh, can we just give a little bit more time and space and mental capacity to explore, to not know, but to really trust that the things that you want, they're there for a reason. They're there because there's something in you that's hardwired to find your right fit. And those things you can't ignore them. A lot of us do, but I think it really costs us a lot. It really harms us. Like I was talking to someone who was much further along. He was like 65, about to retire. And he was just coming to this point where he's like, I built this successful life. I've kind of done what people told me I should do. And now as I'm retiring, I'm sort of wondering, like, I've noticed there's a difference between the things that I really feel drawn to, that I really love, that really light me up, make me feel like I'm coming alive. And there's things that other people want and seem excited for me to do that really don't. And I'm wondering, does that difference matter? And I think
Mm.
even him asking, he kind of already knew,
Yeah.
but he was looking for that permission, right? He was looking for that ability or permit, like space to just figure out, like, what could that look like if I trust that this thing in me that's drawing me towards certain things, but not others, is a voice worth listening to. And that's like what I'm so passionate about, trying to help people do more.
That's a great story. And I think that so many people don't feel that they have that permission. I remember even when I started my coaching career, so many people felt unsafe for me.
Mm.
You're not making enough money. So, maybe you should go work at Starbucks. Maybe you should go do this. Well, you'll have health benefits if you go work at Trader Joe's. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do any of those things. I'm figuring it out. You feel unsafe. I am okay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a lot. People are going to come at you and they're going to say, you shouldn't even try this. So you're crazy to do this. And
Yep.
so, what do you suggest people say when you have all the naysayers, the people who, who are like just trying to put you in a little box and just do these things for me?
It's such a good question because I think that's so real. And the thing that I really try to help people understand is to say, not everybody who loves you and that cares about you and that you care about can do this kind of work with you or can give you the kind of support that you need. So if you're someone, as you were at that stage, just exploring and like, I don't know, but trying to take these steps, for folks in that stage, you need a certain kind of support. You don't need all the naysayers. You don't need all the millions of practical reasons why it's not going to work, or like you already have that in your own head. So somebody else like coming into your space or your heart with that kind of energy is like, that's really hard. So I just really try to help people understand, like, okay, that's coming out of a place of love. They care about you, but just because they love and care about you doesn't mean they can be the kind of person that you need. So you need to find those people. You need to find who they are. I'm guessing that's why people love you as a coach, is that you are that person for them. You're giving them that space. You're giving them that support. You're seeing them in how valuable that part of the process is and all of the vulnerability of it. Because yeah, that's just the reality. And I don't ever say like, yeah, you shouldn't be, I'm not trying to say like be bitter or resentful. Like people just have their own limitations and they are who they are. And again, I've experienced that too in growing my business. Like not everyone that I love and care about was able to kind of hold that space with me, but I had, I had three, four, and I'm like, these are my people. They get it. They see what I'm doing. They believe in it and they believe in it with me. Sometimes they believe in it even more than I do. Even my husband, like that's like he's always been like, no. Like I hit this point in my journey where I was like, I think I should go get, this kind of job. I even applied and I was like, if they give it to me, I'm going to take it. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, don't give up on this. Like, stick with it. It's really good. I'm like, I don't know. So to have those people, I've heard there's another author, she wrote a book. It's escaping my mind right now, but I'll send it after. She just talks about this idea of having a council. So like really being thoughtful about your friendships and relationships and having this sort of sense of like a inner counsel that you most listen to and can most help you. And I think oftentimes if you're starting something new or beginning to explore, that's the kind of energy you really need to prioritize.
We really have to be careful who we listen to and who we surround ourselves by with. I agree with that. I think the other thing that I try to do is to advocate for my own needs. So when somebody tries to support me in a way that doesn't feel supportive, especially if they're family or somebody who is permanently in my life, I will say something like, I know you're
Mm.
trying to support me and I really appreciate that. Can I tell you what would be more supportive? And train people to speak to you in a way that actually is supportive because they think it is supportive. They think that it's a good idea to keep you safe. And I think that we have to speak up. Like we have to
Mm.
let people know this would work better. Is that
Mhm.
something you can do?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's so clear. It's not malicious. It's just a kindness to say, "Hey, can you do this for me?" And I'm guessing for you, some people were able to do that and maybe others weren't, but at least you
Yeah.
put it out there and you made your needs known. I love that.
Yeah, without the expectation that somebody's going to change. But it's more for ourselves to just say, people say things and they aren't always supportive. And
Yeah.
it in all parts of our lives, whether we're grieving
Mm.
or celebrating or trying something new, there are going to be people. I mean, I have kids who didn't go to college, and I had friends who were petrified for me. How
Mm.
could you not send your kid to college? They're not going to do well in life. And I'm like, that's your thing.
Mm.
I
Mm.
wouldn't let my kids just sit home playing video games, but
Yeah,
not everybody is cut out for college. And how many people do
absolutely.
you know who went through years and years of college and ended up in a completely different career and had nothing to do with what they learned in college? So yes, there are some
So true.
benefits, but we don't all fit in a box.
That is one of my biggest convictions. We're all different. We're all unique. We all have our own, unique ways that we've been made up, and it's not cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/last first date to learn more and claim this offer. Let's go into the dating world for a minute here, since this show is about dating and relationships. And when people are going out to find a partner, what is a practical exercise that you can share that can help them to start to uncover their authentic desires when it comes to the kind of partner they want?
One type of reflection that I really value is looking back on your own life and experiences, because I think that those are often some of the best teachers for how you're uniquely wired. So, we've been talking about that. Like each of us is unique. We're looking for different things in relationships, different things matter to us. And we may be aware of some of those things, but I find that previous experiences, maybe with relationships or just with life, I think can have a lot to say about what that means. Because I think it's all about, the work that I do is not necessarily focused on dating because I've been married for so long. I don't know if anybody wants to fully listen to me about dating, but I think like a lot of things in life, there's this idea of finding fit, right? You want to find the right fit, and that's different for each person. That's different for each individual. Each relationship is different because it's made up of two unique individuals as well. So I think looking back on some of your previous experiences is something I really, really value. In the book, I talk about this as sort of calibrating to your own inner compass. But if you're talking about dating, I think that can be really instructive to look back and say, okay, of your previous experiences with dating, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? Why was that the case? Like, what was it about you? What was it about the person? What was it about how you approached the whole process? And I think the more that you can learn from those experiences, the more specifics you have to know what will fit in the future. Because that's also, I think a lot of us, we have these experiences in our lives and we're like, okay, great. That one was positive. That one was negative. Now I shall move on. If we do that, right? We don't really take the time to look back and to reflect and to think and to learn. But again, I think these things in our own lives have so much to teach us because you can't ever fully predict the future, but you know what has worked for you in the past and what hasn't. So the more that you can do that, I think that is really helpful. So I would just love to hear what people would come up with and talk about if they were to look back on their own dating history in life and say, okay, these things not good for me, deal breakers, red flags. These things I really value. And again, it could be about you or the other person, or it could just be about the process, like what works for you and even getting yourself out there and meeting people, because that's really different, right? I've heard some of my friends talk about, like, oh, I can't do the apps. Like they make me so sad. Like I can't do it. Or other people say, no, it really worked well for me. So I think, again, knowing like your style and your approach and what's going to work best for you and find your right way to do it, I think is going to really pay off.
We learn so much if we know how to look back on our lives and
Mhm.
not just say, this didn't work, this worked. Like you said, it's like really try to understand ourselves and what were the red flags that we ignored in the past. I have clients do this as when we first start working together to
Mhm.
really discover the patterns that they've repeated. And a lot of times we don't even know. And then I have them trace it back to which parent that reminded them of,
Mhm.
because often we will choose partners like a narcissistic partner who reminded
Mhm.
them of a narcissistic parent.
Definitely.
And also, what I notice a lot of people do in choosing partners is they choose them for the wrong reasons. They choose
Mhm.
them for status. They choose them because we have common interests. We both like to golf. We both like to go to concerts. That's not enough to wire you together.
Yeah.
It's enough to start something. And so if you notice that you're putting
Mhm.
more emphasis on the common interests and not on the common values, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm curious in
It's
your
good.
relationships, it's been 20 years, but what drew you to your husband?
We were friends for a really long time. So
Mm.
we had known each other as friends for, I want to say, oh, the years are all blending, but a good like 5, 6 years before he approached me and said, hey, I think I have feelings for you that are not just friendship. I, poor man, I laughed in his face. I was so shocked. I literally like cracked up because I was so nervous and again, just so thrown off guard. So he was amazing. He did not run at that point. I was like, oh, I composed myself and I was like, wait, I'm just really, really surprised. I did not see this coming. Can you just give me a little time to think on it? And then as I did, I was like, oh, he really does have a lot of, like you said, the values that I'm looking for in someone. And we enjoy each other. He makes me laugh. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. So we started dating from that point. He likes to try to convince me retroactively that I was secretly interested the whole time and not admitting it to myself or to him. So we can let him have that. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's a good man.
That sounds like a nice male ego kind of statement to make. But I love that he had the courage to approach you. I mean, a lot of people stay in that place of should I, shouldn't I, and never make that move because it's a
Mm,
big risk. And
yes.
so he really, he had courage to do that and really believed in the relationship and the potential of it. And I totally understand why you laughed because I would have probably done the same thing. It's like, it's like, are you kidding me? Like, we're friends.
Yes. Thank you for that.
And
Because most people are like, how could you?
oh no, I would have laughed too. But then you took a beat and you weren't shaming him. You just said, this took me by surprise and let
Yes.
me think about it. And then you went for it. I mean, so all of those things I think are great to have people listen to because friendship is such an important foundation for a relationship. When things don't go well, and that's going to happen pretty quickly,
Yes.
you're going to have crisis. You're going to have issues. You're going to have to negotiate differences. And if you don't have that basis,
Yep.
you don't have a relationship.
1,000%. I would say a good, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but a very high percentage of our dating life was that. It was learning how to do conflict well, to do it in a healthy way, to do, to be upfront, like you said, to say, hey, here's my needs, here's what I'm hearing. And that was a really big part of our dating life. Like we had that basis of friendship, we enjoyed each other, but it was a lot of working through some of those issues. And I'm so grateful because I think that has led to us being able to maintain good communication with each other. We both really value that. But yeah, it was a lot of that. So I definitely agree with that.
Hmm. So let's talk about somebody's done this process of getting clarity. They've looked back, they've realized here's what I want, here's what I don't want. What actions can someone take once they have that clarity, especially in the dating world?
I like to help encourage people to do something called an experiment map. So in my context, a lot of times that has to do with career, but in dating, I would say you can do that for your exploration of what dating could look like. So my guess is, people could come away with like, all right, maybe I want to try to meet someone this way. Maybe I want to try to meet someone this way, or maybe I'm thinking about pursuing a relationship here. And just to kind of map it out, if folks aren't familiar, like it's based on a mind map idea, which is like you sort of draw circles around sort of main ideas, and then you group them with like follow-up ideas. And I find this to be just a clear but flexible way to put thoughts on paper and just to brainstorm and sort of capture the things are there. So the way that it works is you'd put down an option like, okay, I think I want to try to meet someone in this context, or I think I want to pursue, somebody like this. And then you ask yourself, like, okay, if that was my plan, what would I do? And you write down like all your ideas about that. And then after you've done that for 3 or 4 different potential paths, then you take a step back and say, okay, which of these feel the most actionable? Which of these feel the most motivating and energizing? And it's just a way to give yourself that flexibility, like I said, because oftentimes I think people get stuck feeling like, okay, I have to know the one right next thing. And sometimes it's more helpful to give ourselves a little bit more room and to have that experimentation mindset to say, like, okay, great. And of the things you're going to try, say you walk away with 3 to 5 action steps, not all of those are going to end up the way you thought. Some will go better than you thought, some will go worse than you thought, some will be, you're just going to learn things along the way. So I think to give yourself that mindset of this is exploration, this is experimentation. Like I use that language intentionally because it's like a lab. Like you're going to go try some things out in a lab. You're taking this theory. I think I want this. I think I probably want this based on what I know about myself. Now let's go see, is that true? Is that not true? Is it going to work out the way I thought? Is it not? And I think again, to begin to map things out that way, it gives you that ability to what it does for people is gives them an ability to hold enough of that um, permission and spaciousness that we were talking about to just try some things. So it's very simple. I'm sure that's not brand new, but it's just giving people a way to just start trying some things on for size and seeing how it fits. That's, essentially I think a lot of what dating is you're just, seeing like, okay, is this a fit? Is this a match? How does this work?
I love the idea of the mind map. And for anybody who doesn't know what it is, look it up because it's a really cool way to map what you want in life and what you want in work. And I remember doing it when I first started coaching. And I think about this podcast, which started out as a live internet radio show that was twice a week where people would call in, and half the time there would be prank callers, or there would be like the guests wouldn't show up on time. I mean, there was so much unknown. But what I did know is I wanted to do a show. I wanted to get
Mhm.
known in my business. And I had no idea what I was doing.
Sure.
It was called something completely different. It
Love
was
it.
called, what was it called? Courageous Conversations.
Nice.
And, so like it morphed, but
Yes.
you can't edit what you don't write. I always say that because
Mhm.
people say, I want to write a book. Well, start writing it because you can't edit it if you don't write it.
It's so
And
real.
it's the same with everything. It's like just having that mindset of an explorer, an experimenter, having a love lab, that makes you so much less attached to the outcome
Yeah.
and so much more. There's a playfulness to it. It's a creative exercise instead of, oh my God, what's at stake is my whole personality, my self-worth is tied into whether this works or not. It's not.
Yeah.
We're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, like, and seeing what sticks. And
That's right.
yeah, I mean, I think it just feels so light. And I
Yeah.
think dating often feels heavy and hard, and people quit. Like you talk about your friends with the online dating, I'll never would do the apps. Well, what are you doing on the apps? And how are you attaching to the outcome of somebody who doesn't respond to your message? It's just the nature of the apps, and
Mhm.
it gives you an amazing array of people to choose from. It's
Mhm.
also frustrating. But if you
Mhm.
go in with that explorer mindset, I think people will have so much of a better time with dating and probably find it easier to find their match.
I love that. I love that. And I think what I would love for people to get to is to choose intentionally, how do you want dating to feel? So I love that you were naming, like, there's a difference between engaging with dating in a way that feels really heavy and difficult. Again, not to like, silver lining or sort of gloss over the difficulties of it, but I think that could be really powerful to say, like, how do I want this to feel? Even this process. How do I love those words, light and playful. I think that's so generative and so powerful. So if people can even just ask themselves that question, like, how would you want to feel in this process? How do you want to sketch that out for yourself? I think that could be so cool.
Hmm. Well, that kind of answers my last question. But I don't know if you have anything more to add to it, but I always ask, what are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date? And I love this question. Do you have any other tips to add to that?
Yeah, I think it would just be that, is to like let yourself find your joyful way to do it as much as possible. Again, not overlooking the fact that there can be disappointment and frustration and for sure hard things about it, but there's so many different paths to get there. Like you can choose the one that fits you and feels right to you, and you get to change it. Like even how you were talking about you changed the name of your show, like you get to decide that and map that. So I think giving yourself that ability to play and have it feel like almost a joyful thing, that could be really empowering.
I love that. Tracey, tell us how we can find you.
I am probably mostly on Instagram. My handle is at traceyg.me. So TRACEYGEE.me. So that's most of my handles are that. So Instagram, that's my website. So you can find me there. Mhm.
Great. And you have a free gift, a New Year planning guide and
Yes.
template.
Yes, I really love the idea of planning for a new year, not just trying to like change yourself, but really to try to be yourself. So I've developed a method for that. It's called the 3x5 method. It helps you name the values, relationships, outcome. So there's different categories that you choose what you really want in those areas of your life. And again, I find that it's a way to engage with setting up a new year and planning ahead with a lot more honesty, joy, playfulness, rather than like how New Year's resolutions feel sometimes, just like terrible, like you can't wait to be done with them or never think about them again. So for folks that are looking ahead to this new year that we've sort of just started, um, and maybe want to include, their exploration of dating in the middle of that, it's a way just to put some of those things to paper or to screen, however you do it, and to name them. So I have a template for that. So that's at traceyg.me/template. And you can do it as a PDF or a Notion template, which I really love that software. And it's a great way to engage with thinking ahead.
Awesome. That sounds great. Kind of reminds me of the wheel of life that I like to do
Yes.
with clients. Yeah,
Yes.
that's great. Yeah, New Year's resolutions, I'm not a big fan. I go to two gyms, and the beginning of the year, it's packed. There's so many people. And then people are like, oh my God, there's so many people in the class. You can't even move. And I'm like, wait till February.
That's right.
Because that's
That's
what
right.
happens, unfortunately. But if you're making things routine and really making your lifestyle shifts and making these intentional changes, those are the things that really stick. And my takeaways from today's conversation, I mean, there's so many, but I just love the clarity of giving yourself permission, first of all, to have what you want, not listening to all the negative voices, both inside your head and outside, and to apply that to every part of your life, including
Hmm.
dating, and find your unique path, because so many people want to tell us how to do it, what to do. And I'm never a one size fits all person either. I just think we have to explore who we are. And the more we know about ourselves, the better our lives get, the more we get what we want, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I love that, Sandy.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. If you love our show, please give us a high rating on Apple Podcasts. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.